The true horror story NASA tried to hide. Imagine looking up at the dawn sky. You're expecting to see that familiar streak of light, the one that signals heroes returning home safe. But instead, the sky itself seems to rip open, revealing an absolute nightmare. February 1st, 2003. What started as a routine return for the Space Shuttle Columbia and its 7 astronauts became a terrifying, high-altitude spectacle of disintegration. This isn't fiction. This is the 100% real harrowing story of NASA's Skywatcher horror, the last fatal moments of mission STS-107, and the deeply disturbing chain of events that led to a tragedy almost too horrifying to believe. The routine mission and the ominous sign. 16 days before, on January 16, 2003, Space Shuttle Columbia, NASA's old reliable, roared into the Florida sky. On board STS-107 were 7 dedicated astronauts: Commander Rick Husband, pilot William McCool, mission specialists Kalpana Chawla, Laurel Clark, and David Brown, payload commander Michael Anderson, and Israel's very first astronaut, Ilan Ramon. Their mission? It was all about international teamwork and science, packed with experiments on everything from medicine to the atmosphere. For the crew and NASA, it felt like another complex, but pretty standard flight in the shuttle program's long story. The launch itself looked mostly good. That familiar, controlled explosion of power. But then, just 81.7 seconds after liftoff, something happened. Something that seemed small at the time, but would turn out to be the seed of the horror to come. A piece of insulating foam, about the size of a small suitcase and weighing around 1.67 pounds, broke off from the external tank's left bipod ramp. It was moving fast, hundreds of miles per hour relative to the shuttle, and it slammed right into the leading edge of Columbia's left wing. Now, foam strikes like this had happened before. Sometimes they caused a bit of tile damage, but they'd mostly been written off, seen as an acceptable risk, something to fix after landing. Early quick checks by some engineers suggested that if there was any damage, it wasn't critical. So the mission went on. The astronauts got busy with their science, completely unaware of the deadly wound their ship had just received. Out in the vacuum of space, the damage stayed hidden, a silent clock ticking down to disaster. The unfolding, disturbing sequence in orbit. For 16 days, Columbia orbited Earth, a shining example of what humans can achieve. The crew got through over 80 experiments, their days packed with careful scientific work in zero gravity. Back on the ground, though, a different, much more worrying story was starting to unfold quietly among NASA's engineers. That foam strike, the one caught by launch cameras, it hadn't gone unnoticed. A special debris assessment team was put together to figure out what happened. Their first look, using fuzzy footage and the computer models they had, didn't scream catastrophe. But some engineers were really worried. This piece of foam was bigger than most they'd seen before, and it hit a really vulnerable spot on the wing. The reinforced carbon-carbon, RCC panels, that kept the wing's edge safe from the scorching heat of re-entry. These concerned engineers pushed hard for a better look at the damage. They knew the Department of Defense had spy satellites, powerful enough to take pictures of Columbia in orbit and actually see what was going on with the wing. They sent up multiple requests through different NASA channels to get these crucial images. And this is where that disturbing sequence really starts to take shape. It wasn't just one thing going wrong. It was a whole series of missed chances and bad calls. High-level mission managers, dealing with tight schedules and a feeling that even if they found serious damage, there wasn't much they could do, ended up saying no to these requests for an on-orbit look. There were debates, emails flying back and forth filled with anxiety, even presentations showing worst-case scenarios if there was a breach. Still, the official word was that the shuttle was safe to come home. The argument went that even if they confirmed a problem, there were no set plans for fixing that kind of damage in space, and a rescue mission. Too complex, too risky in the time they had. The astronauts themselves? They were told about the foam strike, but it was downplayed, and they were assured it wasn't a safety issue. So they carried on with their mission, with no idea of the intense debates happening back on Earth about their safety. Debates they were tragically losing. The culture at NASA back then, which the Columbia Accident Investigation Board later slammed, seemed to put schedules and getting things done efficiently above rigorously checking out engineering worries that didn't fit the usual pattern or that might mess with the plan. Every day that went by without a proper inspection was another step towards a disaster that just maybe could have been avoided. The horror wasn't just in the eventual breakup. It was in this slow, creeping paralysis in the system that stopped anyone from truly understanding the danger. The harrowing final moments, re-entry. On the morning of February 1st, 2003, after 16 successful days in space, Commander Rick Husband and pilot Willie McCool fired Columbia's engines. They nudged the orbiter out of its stable orbit and onto a path back home. The deorbit burn was perfect. For the crew, this was it, the last leg of a long trip, the start of their return to family, friends, and Earth. Down in Mission Control in Houston, flight controllers watched the telemetry, that constant stream of data from the descending shuttle. At first, everything looked fine. As Columbia sliced into the thicker layers of Earth's atmosphere over the Pacific, re-entry started just like it was supposed to. The orbiter, with its protective thermal tiles and RCC panels, was built to handle temperatures up to 3,000 degrees Fahrenheit. But that silent wound on its left wing, it was about to make itself known, lethally, around 8:48 a.m. Central Standard Time. As Columbia streaked over California, the first hints of trouble started showing up in the data. Mission Control began getting weird sensor readings. A temperature sensor for the left wing's Elevon hydraulic system, that's a control surface, showed an unusual spike. Then more sensors in the left wing started failing or giving crazy readings. Brake line temperatures, tire pressures. Inside the cockpit, alarms must have started blaring. Lights flashing warnings about failing systems. The astronauts, incredibly well-trained and disciplined, would have been running through emergency procedures, trying to figure out what was going wrong as things failed one after another. Over the open communication lines, their voices stayed calm, professional, but you could hear the growing urgency in their words with Mission Control. "We see your tire pressure messages and we did not copy your last," Commander Husband radioed, acknowledging the problems, but also hinting at communication difficulties. As Columbia crossed from California into Nevada, then Utah, Arizona, New Mexico, and finally Texas, things got bad, fast. The superheated air, the plasma of re-entry, had found that hole in the left wing caused by the foam. It was like a blowtorch cutting through the wing's internal aluminum structure. The wing was literally being eaten away from the inside out. On the ground, people who had gathered to watch the shuttle pass by started seeing more than just the usual bright streak. They saw multiple pieces of debris, glowing like embers, falling away from the shuttle. This terrifying show was unfolding live in the sky. At 8:59 a.m. Central Standard Time, Columbia was screaming along at Mach 18.3 over 207,000 feet up. The shuttle was struggling with massive drag, fighting to stay stable. The last voice transmission from Commander Rick Husband was a reply to Mission Control about those tire pressure readings. He calmly said, "Roger, His words were cut off. Then, just silence. The data stream ended. The orbiter, its ability to fly completely gone, started to break apart violently. The stress was too much. The once mighty Columbia, a symbol of human achievement, was disintegrating over Texas and Louisiana, a rain of fire and metal against the morning sky. For those 7 astronauts, the final moments must have been a horrifying realization of total loss of control as their world literally came apart around them. Back in Mission Control, the sudden loss of all data and communication from Columbia was met with a stunned, chilling silence. Flight Director Leroy Kane and his team tried desperately to get back in touch, their voices echoing in the suddenly quiet room. "Columbia, Houston, UHF comm check," Entry Flight Controller Laura Hopp called out, her voice steady but heavy with an unspoken dread. Nothing. The screens that just moments before showed a constant flow of information about the shuttle's health were now frozen or blank. The awful truth started to sink in. The eyewitness reports from the public, combined with the lost telemetry, painted an undeniable picture, a catastrophic failure. Within minutes, NASA declared a spacecraft emergency. That terrifying spectacle people saw on the ground was confirmed. The Space Shuttle Columbia was lost. The hours and days that followed saw one of the biggest ground search operations ever. Debris from Columbia was scattered over hundreds of square miles, mostly in East Texas and Louisiana. Thousands of volunteers and emergency workers searched through forests, fields, and towns, recovering pieces of the shuttle and, tragically, the remains of its crew. The nation and the whole world watched in shock and sorrow. Losing those 7 astronauts, Husband, McCool, Chawla, Clark, Brown, Anderson, and Ramon, was a massive blow. A harsh reminder of just how dangerous pushing the frontiers of exploration really is. The mission that had started with so much promise and scientific hope had ended in a public and devastating disaster. The story of Columbia is a tough one to tell. It's a stark reminder of how thin the line is between triumph and tragedy when we venture into the hostile environment of space. If you think understanding these pivotal, often painful moments is important, maybe consider subscribing. And please, share your thoughts in the comments. What other events, famous or forgotten, do you think we should take a closer look at? This isn't some made-up horror story designed for thrills. It's the documented 100% real story of a disaster that could have been prevented. The Columbia Accident Investigation Board, CAIB, an independent group, was quickly put together to find out what caused the tragedy. Their detailed report, released in August 2003, didn't pull any punches. It confirmed the physical cause. That piece of foam from the bipod ramp hit the left wing during launch and punched a hole in an RCC panel. When Columbia re-entered the atmosphere, this hole let superheated gases get inside the wing, melting its structure from the inside out, leading to the shuttle breaking apart. But the CAIB report went way beyond just the physical cause. It pointed to a broken safety culture at NASA. It highlighted problems in the organization, a history of downplaying concerns about foam strikes, and a management style that, without meaning to, shut down dissenting opinions, and made it hard for critical engineering worries to get the attention they needed. The report laid out all those missed chances to check the damage while Columbia was still in orbit. Chances that, if they'd been taken, might have changed everything. Investigators came to the chilling conclusion that if NASA managers had truly understood how bad the damage was, things like an emergency spacewalk for repair, though incredibly risky and far from certain, or even a potential rescue mission using the Space Shuttle Atlantis, which was getting ready for a later flight, might have been seriously considered, no matter how slim the chances seemed. That's the truly haunting part of Columbia's loss, knowing that this tragedy wasn't just some unavoidable accident or an unknown danger of spaceflight. It was the end result of a chain of events stemming from both technical weaknesses and human decisions. The real horror is realizing that those 7 astronauts might have been saved if warnings had been listened to, if procedures had been different, if a more cautious path had been chosen. The sacrifice of the Columbia crew did lead to big changes at NASA. They focused on better safety rules, improved ways to take pictures during launch, and a renewed commitment to listening to all engineering voices. The loss of Space Shuttle Columbia and its 7 courageous astronauts on that February morning is still one of the darkest moments in the history of space exploration. It's a Skywatcher horror story, precisely because it happened right above us, seen by ordinary people, and because the monster in this story wasn't some alien. It was a terrible mix of physics, failing materials, and human error. Columbia's legacy is a solemn promise to learn, to get better, and to never, ever forget the immense risks and responsibilities that come with reaching for the stars. It's a constant reminder that watchfulness, open communication, and an absolute commitment to safety have to be the top priorities in the bold adventure of exploring the final frontier. The names Rick Husband, Willie McCool, Kalpana Chawla, Laurel Clark, David Brown, Michael Anderson, and Ilan Ramon are burned into history, not just for their tragic end, but for their bravery and their part in a dream that, even with all its dangers, keeps calling humanity onward. Thank you for watching Fear Files Real Nightmares. Until next time, keep your lights on and your doors locked.